Hey people, this episode of WTF is sponsored by Stamps.com. Go to Stamps.com and type in WTF when you click the radio microphone to start a no-risk trial and get a bonus offer worth $110. That's Stamps.com. Enter WTF. Do it.
Lock the gate!
Are we doing this? Really? Wait for it. Are we doing this? Wait for it.
Pow!
What the fuck?
WTF.
And it's also, what the fuck? What's wrong with me? It's time for WTF. What the fuck?
With Marc Maron.
All right, let's do this. How are you, what the fuckers? What the fuck buddies? What the fucking ears? What the fuck nicks? What the fucker baiters and what the fuckalos? Okay, that's it. How are you? Marc Maron here. WTF is the name of the show. I am the host of said show. This is it. We are here again on Monday. Can I say this? I will be at the Stress Factory in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Yeah, I didn't do that on purpose. I did not do that on purpose. That is going to be April 13th and 14th. Haven't been there in a while. It's an old room. It's a big room. It's an intense room. I welcome all of my friends from the East Coast to travel down to New Brunswick, New Jersey. My friends in New York and Brooklyn, do something unhip for a change. Come to New Brunswick, New Jersey. See me at the Stress Factory. It's going to be my only East Coast dates for a little while. I'll get back there eventually, but please come out. You can get the link to tickets at WTFpod.com. I also just added a link there for Just Coffee. WTF blend in the merch section. That's the one that I make a little percentage off of. Today on the show, David Cross. You may know him from Mr. Show, Arrested Development, Chipmunk movies, other movies he's had parts in. You might know him from back in the day in Boston when I met him. It's so weird. It's so weird talking to Dave. I mean, we had a long conversation. I'm not going to burn up too much time here. I pulled this book out my shelf. I was out to dinner with my buddy Chris Cooper, the artiste, the man who hot rodded the hot rod art, the dude who did that poster for my shows up at the Neptune. Great poster artist, great painter. We're actually doing a collector's card sticker of that poster in the style of the old Odd Rods card. But nonetheless, we were out to dinner, and we got to talking about Adam Parfrey, and I hadn't thought of his name in a while, and I realized I had this book, and we started talking about this book, Apocalypse Culture, edited by Adam Parfrey. And this book changed my fucking life. The first edition, you can't find the first edition that much anymore. I don't even know if you can find the second edition. I've got both editions because of how obsessed I was with this book. And it changed my life. It was one of those books. It was like The Denial of Death, but a lot different in that it just blew every aspect of my fucking mind so far out that I could never look at things the same again. And if you want that experience, I don't know if it holds up because I was sort of looking through it. It's got a painting by Joe Coleman on the front. Now, this is the time in the early 90s. You know, when did this come out? I mean, my brain was, this was 1987. Holy shit. Where the hell was I? Where did I buy this book? Because I remember it coming out and I was like, oh my God, I got to have this book. So it must have been right after the things broke apart in my head. No wonder it had such a powerful impact. But there's 4 different sections in this thing. There's Apocalypse Theologies, Apocalypse Art, Apocalypse Science, and Apocalypse Politics. But this was during the conspiracy time. There was a thing in here written by this out there ex-Freemason called King Kill 33 Degree Latitude, Masonic Symbolism, the Assassination of John F. Kennedy by a guy named James Shelby Downward. And there's an intro to it by a guy named Michael A. Hoffman. And this thing just blew my mind. It just broke down the assassination, the events that surrounded it as part of a Masonic ritual. You know, dealing with, going down to the names of people like Jack Ruby, the ruby, the color red for ruby, and just breaking it down all the way down to that point. And there was a point in my life where I was like, see, you just got to break things down efficiently, down to the very, even if it's a name, break it down to a color or a jewel, because that jewel has some sort of significance. boy, there is no end to the depth of bullshit you can get yourself involved in with conspiracy. So ornate. But in retrospect, I look at it as one of the most beautiful lyrical pieces of conspiracy writing as a genre that I've ever read. And there's all kinds of stuff in here. And just reading this stuff just blew my mind and broke me wide the fuck open. It took me years to close it back up again. That's the one thing, man. Listen to me, man. If you push your brain out there, boy, you're going to have to close it back up. If you open up that aperture too much, eventually you're going to have to close it back up and learn to adjust it. Can't stay wide open. You can't stay wide open. But when I met Dave Cross, Christ, we talked about all this kind of shit. And this is a little something I just, for some reason, I feel like being honest with you about this. That I was not really a popular kid. I don't know if you could glean that from listening to me. But I was the kind of kid, I fought for my friends. And I don't mean that I defended them, that I had to just intrude. But I was just so socially awkward, so socially uncomfortable. I couldn't call myself a nerd because I didn't have any sort of obsessive focus at the time other than the need to belong, to be part of the crew that I thought was cool. And man, I went to every length to show up at places where the cool people, or people I thought were cool. I'm not saying cool in a general sense, because I don't know that I was cool ever, but I knew who I wanted to hang out with. And Dave was one of those guys from the very beginning of when I met him. And we talk about the whole thing. It's a long interview. I've known him longer than I've known CK, longer than I've known just about anybody. And I first met him in college, and I thought he was the funniest fucking guy I'd ever met in my life. And he went to another school. We never became friends, but, years later when I went back to Boston, he was around. I'm like, I gotta fucking be friends with that guy. How do I be friends with that guy? I was one of those guys. And it takes a lot for me to admit that to be so awkward. I was never the guy that people wanted to hang around. I'm not sure I'm that guy now. Obviously, some people want to talk to me. They sit here and talk to me, and they come over and talk to me. But I was never the guy that's sort of like, what's Maron doing? Let's go hang out with Maron. I was more the guy that's sort of like, oh man, Maron. Yeah, and I've talked about that before, but I so badly wanted to be friends with Dave and that crew because I thought he was so fucking funny when I moved back to Boston after LA and after I'd ripped my brain wide open and I was certain I had some sort of profound, multi-tiered, elaborate understanding of why the way things were the way they were, and I was pretty sure I had some important part to play in it. But boy, I was an angry barista, and these guys would come in, Cross would come in, Keitlinger would come in, and I just so wanted to hang out with them. And I think I kind of imposed, perhaps that's the word I was looking for, that I just made sure I would show up where people were, and I would go out of my way to go, where are you guys going? Where are you going, Dave? How can I hang out with you, Dave? Where are you going to be at that place, Dave? Yeah, can I give you a ride? I mean, I was that kind of guy, like, let me take you over there so at least I know we'll be hanging out and I know that I'll know where you are. I'm not proud of that part of my past, but I pursued Dave Cross as a friend, in a very, aggressive way. And we are friends. We remain, there's still that thing we have between each other. It's a little bizarre. I mean, we're going back, oh shit, so many years, 89, 99, over 20 years, 22 years. But it was this conversation is one of those conversations between guys sharing memories of a long time ago and kind of putting things back together. He ended up doing real well for himself. I'm doing okay for myself. But it's hard for me to admit the beginnings of this friendship. It usually doesn't work out when you aggressively pursue a friendship because, you're going to be annoying and it might not be a friendship you wanted to have in the first place. I remember there was one time when I was dating the girl who became my first wife, and Dave was living with his girlfriend in Alston. And we went over there just to eat and hang out. And we finished and we were drinking and we were kind of wasted, all four of us. And the evening was over and I was like, can we just crash here? That's kind of weird. And I'm thinking about it. I didn't bring this up with him in conversation either. And he's like, well, yeah, I guess you could just take a cab or, I mean, you have your car. I'm like, yeah, I'm a little wasted. And why don't you just let us crash here? And we did. I remember they were like, well, we just bought this futon because they just moved into this place. And me and this woman, crashed in their living room. And I'm not sure why I'm admitting this to you guys. I don't even know. I didn't talk to him about it. Maybe I'm just psychoanalyzing myself for a change. And I remember that we crashed here, but we ended up having sex on this brand new futon, and it was a black futon, and we kind of made a mess. And there was, there's undeniable sex mess on this brand new futon. And I'm looking back on it, I'm like, why the fuck did I have to stay at his house? Why didn't I just take a cab home? Why did I end up doing that on his futon? And then, when you look at things in retrospect, 22 years ago, I don't know. Maybe I was just being territorial, weird. Jesus Christ. I got no closure for this thing. Other than, I love Dave Cross, and I always get a kick out of him. I'm glad he's my friend. And had I brought this up, during the conversation, I would, certainly apologize, for messing up that futon.
Lock the gates on these fuckheads!
Today we are sponsored by Stamps.com. This is a pretty regular thing. It's a good gig. If you want a good deal, I can set one up for you at Stamps.com. Just enter WTF as a promo code. But before I get into talking about Stamps.com, I have been encouraging people to send me handwritten letters and cards, preferably with a Stamps.com stamp, but that's not necessary. I'm enjoying getting the handwritten cards. I've got a very sweet card here that's got sort of like some, definitely a store-bought card, and it's got some stars and little explosions on it in a sort of graphic-y arts kind of way. And on the front it says, what an achievement! And inside it says, it's time for you to live it up, to smile and take a bow, and time for everyone to say congrats, hooray, and wow. Oh, there's some writing in here. Mark, congratulations on your IFC series. You deserve all the success that comes your way. Keep up the important work. All the best, Josh. P.S. Sorry for the slightly corny card. Cards for podcasters developing an IFC series are a yet-to-be-tapped market. Well, I appreciate the thought, Josh. And thank you for all your cards and letters. I do appreciate it. So look, whether you're running a business or working from home like I am, or selling items through online sites like eBay and the other ones, going to the post office to send out your letters and packages is a complete waste of time. So I'm telling you to use Stamps.com instead. You'll never have to go to the post office again, no matter what you're sending. With Stamps.com, you can buy and print official U.S. postage for any letter or package using your own computer and printer. It's easy. They'll send you a scale. Stamps.com will give you a free digital scale. What did I just say? See that? I said it out of my mouth, and I said it here on the copy. That calculates the exact postage you need. 2 billion letters and packages have already been sent using Stamps.com. That is a lot. Man, that's more than I ever imagined. Look, we use Stamps.com here at the house. We use it for the business. We use it for some of the merch. It saves me time. It saves me hassle. And Stamps.com has a special offer for my listeners. Use my promo code WTF to start a no-risk trial and get a $110 bonus offer. It includes the digital scale that I mentioned before and up to $55 in free postage. So don't wait, folks. Go to Stamps.com before you do anything else. Click on the radio microphone at the top of the homepage and type in WTF. That's Stamps.com, enter WTF. And I really appreciate these letters, especially when they have Stamps.com on it. Stamps.com. Stamps.com. Do I have a tumor? Seriously. Stamps.com. All right? Stamps.com, Mark. And you now say it into the microphone to everybody. Stamps.com. All right, maybe I don't have a tumor. Dave Cross is in the garage, and Dave Cross has been on the show a couple of times, but in a different context. This is the first time it's face to face. No, we did the live one. That was face to face. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I've done it twice, right? Were they both the same thing? Both live?
No, you did what you did on the phone at the very beginning of the thing.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't remember how that went, but I don't think I upset you then. I'm not sure. I don't think I upset you the second time either.
No, not at all.
Well,
the second time was more of a show that you were.
Yeah, we were having a good time. Yeah. So, why are you here?
In your shed?
No, it's a garage in Los Angeles.
This is, I mean, it's not I don't know. I'd have to look up the definition of garage. I'm going to go with shed.
Well, that's a shed. See right out there? That's a little shed.
That looks like a trash can.
No, behind the door, there's a shed.
Oh, I didn't bring my X-ray vision.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, no, if you take the floor out, there's a garage. And that right there was an old workbench that I left in there. Somebody did work in here. And like right where we're sitting, the car would come in. There's a
So you're saying a car fit where we are and they did work?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, maybe they pulled it in halfway and opened the hood to work. But I'm not making this
They
up.
would have to crawl out through the windshield.
This is big enough for a car.
All right, let's.
It's not important. You're in Los Angeles, and I get the feeling that this is the last place you want to be ever.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm out here. The part of the problem is I keep coming out here. I've been away for the better part of 2 years, and when I can get home, which is now a combination of New York City and a place I have upstate, I really, really like it there, especially divvying up my time 100% of the time. I love it there.
Yeah.
And I don't, I like my kind of moment to moment in LA because if I'm here, it means my girlfriend's here and hanging out with her family who I love and my friends out here. But when you don't have a lot of stuff to do, like thank God you called me and said, come and do this because I'd just be sitting around,
in LA.
Not even just LA, but on the west side, which I like the weather there, but man, I hate those people.
Yeah.
Those annoying pseudo hippie anarchy, raw food, ignorant, proselytizing,
progressively
loud,
ignorant. That's
annoying.
the worst. Progressive ignorance is the worst.
It's just so much attitude and it just bums me out and
you'd be stranded there.
Yeah, exactly. And as you know from our back-to-back, I was supposed to do this yesterday, but I mean, you're right. I could have rented a car, but I'm only here for 5 days. So how often am I going to need a car really? Because
in Los Angeles, probably never at all. I mean,
no. What I mean is because I'll be doing stuff with my girlfriend,
right,
or friends or whatever. So occasionally something comes up, and then I'm like, and then everyone makes fun of me for not renting a car.
Oh, so it wasn't just me?
It's not just you. But for the one thing that I need. And all I did was postpone this to the next day. And look, I've got my future mother-in-law's car.
You're using your future mother-in-law's car. You're using the family car.
Yeah, cheap. I'm cheap.
Is that what it is? Are you?
I'm not normally cheap, but I'm practical.
Yeah.
I'm more the Scottish stereotype than the Jewish stereotype. I'm not hoarding money and counting gold shekels.
Ingots and shekels. Yeah.
But rather I go like, look, I'm not going to rent a car for a week if I'm only going to use it once.
Right.
And if it's for Maron's podcast, fuck it.
Yeah.
No, I'll do it the next day.
Why should I spend an extra $72? For a compact that hurts.
Oh, no, that's part of the problem. I go large. I get full on
SUV.
Humvee.
Escalade.
Yeah, Escalade, tricked out. Yeah. No, it's $900 a day.
Oh, so you're the guy at the counter going, does it have rims? Do they spin the rims? Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you finish Todd Margaret?
Yeah, that's all done. The story is told. It was always meant to be, the story spans 14 days, so it's told.
So it's done?
Yeah,
you actually pitched a show that only has a life of 12 episodes?
No, I didn't have to because it started off, in Britain. It started off with them kind of approaching me about doing a show that I could co-produce.
Yeah.
And then with the potential to sell it to the States. And IFC came in kind of after it was established.
And said, we'll run it?
Yeah, and paid for half the production initially, and then kicked in full time because it's a common story in this business, but had done this first series, was on Channel 4 in the UK, and then they were all on board to do it again, do the second series. So was IFC. Everything was great.
Yeah.
Copacetic. I was going to get a bump up in the budget because it was really low budget, and then in the interim. Channel 4 got a new what do you call it?
Head of production, or
head of not production.
In Britain, it's probably like a knight of production.
It's they call him a Duke of Sandwich, and it was the Duke of Sandwich of
BBC.
Not production, but I'm spacing on the name. But it's basically
the Duke of Development.
Yeah, decide what they're gonna put in, and it was
the Duke of Programming.
Yeah, the Baron of Earlwich, and so she came in. She's not a fan of comedy. Took all the comedy money out of Channel 4.
Did you meet her?
I didn't meet her, but my co-writer knew her from various things, and he had a great anecdote. Her name is Jay Hunt, and the C is silent. And she's just a shitty person.
Yeah.
What was it? It was for the BAFTAs. My friend, this co-writer, Sean Pye, was great.
How do you know him?
I know him from going way back with Todd Margaret. I went over there for about a week.
Oh, he's a British guy.
Yeah. They set me up to meet a bunch of various potential co-writers, co-producers, and Sean had the good fortune of being the last guy on the last day. And I met a lot of my heroes. I mean, I met people who I just couldn't believe I was getting to meet. Charlie Brooker. Sam and Jesse from Peep Show. There were a number of people who came in that Robert Popper. Like, man, I love their work, you know?
It's so weird. I had no idea you were such a British comedy fan. I mean, I knew you liked Python and everything, but I don't know the people you just mentioned, and I feel stupid. I don't know what it is about me that I don't seem to find time to do a lot of things, but like when I went to England, I interviewed Stuart Lee, I interviewed Tim Key, I've interviewed Simon Munnery, but these are guys that are, stand-up legends. Right. Not Tim Key's sort of a new guy, but Stuart Lee and Munnery are stand-up people. And I don't lock on to shows, to sketch shows, or to, comedies that come out of Britain. I don't seek them out. I feel a little ignorant about it.
Well, I mean, I guess you are ignorant about it only because you don't seek it out.
Right. I mean, but it seems to me in my mind it was something that you were always kind of geared towards. I mean, like when I first met you, it seems that Python really informed your sensibility a lot.
Oh, huge. As a kid, that was the first absurdist, like just laugh out loud, silly comedy that as I got older, took on new meanings and had layers to it that I appreciated as an adult. Almost like those old Batman episodes where as a kid you're like, oh, it's so funny, and then when you watch it again, 15 years later, like, oh, I didn't even get that. That's a total taking the piss out of this thing and this thing. And Python was like that a lot.
But even more than stand-up, it influenced you. I mean, like when I met you doing stand-up, I mean, your bits were pretty elaborate, pretty character-driven, pretty absurd initially.
Yeah. Well, and again, you met me early on as I was developing my voice and probably hadn't even really developed it yet. I still had that, deep, Andy Kaufman,
he was your guy.
Influence. Yeah. And even Stephen Wright in a sense, and, hadn't turned into the comic that I was.
You hadn't found you hadn't given voice to like David Cross's cynicism.
Right. It was
fragmented.
Co-opting someone else's cynicism.
Well, no, it was done through characters. You were provoking the audience's patience.
Right.
And also challenging their ability to understand, what was funny and what isn't funny.
Right. And it was what it was is an elaborate giving up.
Yeah.
Before, like, I'm not even going to try to win you over. It's not going to work. I give up. I might as well just wrap myself in a white flag.
I still talk about, like, there are moments because, we knew each other in such a weird developmental period and we were so fucking young. There's just moments where that are amazing. When you used to go up and open with that gay character, God damn it. It was so fucking good. Because people had no idea whether or not you were kidding.
And it's the one true regret I have is that I'll never be able to do stuff like that because people know me. And but man, for a good decade, going up and doing like the Montreal Comedy Festival and showcasing at the Improv or out here in LA when nobody knew who I was, and being able to do those weird on a showcase night. That's the key. Is
8 minutes.
There's 20 comics going up there, and they're trotting out their best stuff, it's tight, and it's a lot of pop culture references, and then there's this what? And it, as you witnessed, it would miss as often as it would hit, and when it missed really big.
But did you enjoy that? I mean, because
because you always have that in a selfish pussy way. You always have that ability to if it did bomb to say, well, that's part of it.
Yeah, or they didn't get it.
They didn't get it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of true. It's not like a guy who's bitter because his joke wasn't that funny and it, whatever. So I always had that. That was a bit of a crutch I could
do the weird stuff.
Well, to have that attitude, like, right. Fuck it.
Yeah. Well, there were some weird bits though. The dancing bit, that was always good. I don't remember how that
dancing bit. Oh, wait,
he used to close with it with the do the cat.
Kid was the hyperventilating.
Yeah. That's how it started. Like you would start. I don't remember what the bit was.
So far back.
But I don't remember what the bit was. But you're like, I can't. I don't know. I can't. And then they'd start the In Excess song.
Yes.
Bang. And then you just start dancing.
Then starting dancing. Yeah.
And then you do the cat. And then you do the...
Oh, right. Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and then there was that one night where you took a roll of toilet paper, you stripped down to your underwear, and to music, you started, running toilet paper around the entire room, like wrapping things in toilet paper. That was some extension of that piece, I think.
Maybe. I don't know.
You don't remember that?
I don't remember
Most
that.
Most people would remember that if they did that.
I don't remember that at all.
That, man, those days when we had the run of Catch a Rising Star late night in Cambridge.
Oh, the best.
There was like a group of people that, like, once the guy who booked the place left, like, this guy, Robin Horton, would do the list. And, ultimately you and me and a couple other people would start at number 6 and he'd move us down to 15.
Right.
But he would leave at like 9. And when we saw him like put on his dumb parka and get his briefcase and act like we liked him and go, I'm going to go. It'd be like, yes, it was a free for all. And then no one could get on stage without someone getting on the back mic going, Mark, like James Lemur or whoever.
I was going to say Lemur, he was probably the king of the subversive, like calling in. He would go find where the applications were, and we all knew where he hid them.
Yeah.
He put them up at that top
that's
shelf in the back
in the office.
room.
Yeah.
And then Lemur would copy all the information and they'd call the people as Robin, as the booker, and tell them to come down. But it's like, listen, it's going to be pirate themed. We want you to dress like a pirate. Just the cruelest.
Yeah, I never liked that kind of thing.
But
it always felt bad to me. But I liked him on the back mic where no one could get through a set without somebody interrupting and all kinds of fucking weirdness went on.
It was, I remember something Robin said to me when he had me like, started having me literally close, and I was like, what the fuck? What? I mean, I've been doing this for years. I don't, why? And he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, you're going to school, and then left.
Right.
Like, that was his idea. Like,
or there was always,
we're going to learn you.
Did you ever get this one where you do a joke and he pull you into the office and goes, that joke you just did, it's page 6 out of Barry Crimmins' notebook.
I didn't get that, but I didn't really do that kind of stuff. Yeah. But I can certainly imagine you
there was a lot
lectured.
It's a few different numbers. That's page 3 of Barry Crimmins' notebook.
Yeah.
A horrible fucking guy.
So Barry numbers his notebooks?
I guess so.
Does he do it first, or does he write all his stuff down and then go page 1, 2, 3, or does he write it before that when the page is blank?
Well, the weird thing was he gave him to Robin for safekeeping and had no idea.
Memorize these, then give them back.
And if anybody does anything similar to what I'm doing,
I might call you in the middle of the night and ask for what's on page 5.
Do you find that weird as we get older that there's this whole element of like, what happened to that guy?
Yeah,
I mean,
of course.
And I don't know really. It's very hard for me to frame it because like I don't see, like I see points in my life where I'm like, I could be that guy. And I have a tremendous heavy heart about it. When I run into people and you're like, what have you been doing? Well, I don't know. Isn't there something heartbreaking about the whole thing?
Yeah, depending on the person, depending on their, on the path they took and what they did along that path. I mean, I think you're as good an example of anybody, because you were clearly gifted and talented, and you also had a lot of demons, and you exacerbated the situation irresponsibly, and then you got to a point, and you were still able to kind of power through, but you also had sort of plateaued at a point. Yeah, and I don't know what it was that motivated you. nor do I care to know.
Yeah.
But you eventually cleaned up.
Yeah.
And you're a better person for it. You're a better comedian. You're a better writer. You're better.
Yeah.
I mean, so there are people who didn't do that. But an example of somebody who, and also where we were, and well, you got out of Boston before I did, but where we were.
Not really.
No? When did you go to New
No,
York?
I mean, there was that weird thing where, we had done, we can go here and then we'll come back around to Todd Margaret. But I mean, what had happened was we were all doing stand up, and then you and I remember we sat down, we wrote the manifesto for Cross Comedy.
Yeah.
I did the first 2 shows with you, and then I went to New York and you guys went to LA. You, Dombrowski, Groff, it almost seemed
that
like. That
was later. No, but you were in New York.
Right, 89.
Yeah, and I stayed there for another 3 years in
you
Boston.
Did?
Yeah. I didn't move to LA until 93.
I think that's the interesting thing, because that's really where this sense of alternative comedy or whatever started, because what was going on at Catch in the basement, around the time that you were doing or Cross Comedy, it was clear that there were some comics that were never going to play, Knicks or be regional acts, that there was really that was about the beginning, like in the early 90s, where it was like, we have to cut our own path.
Yeah.
To find work for ourselves.
Yeah, definitely.
And you guys decided, it's weird. I don't have a lot of regrets, but I don't know that I ever knew how to work with people. And I just always had this dream of stand up, and the sense that, you were a huge fan of sketch, and you guys were, really started to do that stuff. And you moved out to LA in 93, you said, with Cross Comedy, basically, with those guys, with those players.
No, not necessarily. I mean, that's not really what happened. I reluctantly left, Boston. And the only regret I have is my pretentious, kind of arrogance, about purity and comedy and all that bullshit. But I got offered.
When did that die? Because I'm not feeling that. Is that gone now? I
think it's gone. I don't know if you're aware, but the threequel to Alvin and the Chipmunks is contractually obligated. That's a whole other story that I will get into.
We should get into that, because okay, let's not do it yet. Okay, so what happened now? You didn't want to leave Boston. Now I think people should know that Dave Cross never cut any corners. You went out there, you did the horrible gigs, you took the hits, you had several, spectacular jobs to make money. There was, and I know we've discussed this before, but I tell the story still about
the medical experiments.
The medical experiments were great. The one where the antacid story, the best. That to me, that's the greatest thing in the world.
That was pretty funny.
Because you're you always went into these things with a very practical notion of oh, how bad could it be? I'm going to do this. They're going to pay me this, and then that'll be that. And then you go and you would come home fucking dazed, burping and sick.
That was also my complete ignorance as to how it would work. But the short version of that story is, I'd done these medical experiments. It's just a lazy person's way to make a bunch of cash.
Did you give blood as well?
Yeah, that was the first one I did. I didn't give blood. Giving blood was part of the thing. That's when I had to stay overnight at the place in Jamaica Plain, and with just toothless truck driver. Wow. So you were a trucker before you became a truck stop gay hooker, or which happened? Vice versa. Was it the first way around, and now you're here and everybody knows you as Buddy, and then I went back. It's just a easy way to make a bunch of money. And by a bunch, I'm talking about back then, it was $250.
Right.
That's all I need for a couple weeks.
Right.
And so I did a pretty easy one. What I thought was easy. You go in at 10 in the morning, I believe, and then you're released at about 5. You didn't have to go overnight, and it was just, it was 4 Sundays of that in a row, and it was to test antacid versus placebos.
Right.
And so the first morning I went in, I think Rich Turiel drove me in there. I remember Louis drove me in one time, and I was really hungover. We had been up all night. We were probably at some loft thing doing a show or whatever, and I was still drunk, and so they had big vats of Wendy's chili, and it was burnt on the bottom. And because they didn't have real people cooking it, they just heated it up, and it was burnt, and just nasty chili. And then Dixie cups of Carlo Rossi red wine.
Box wine?
Yeah, to give you
right,
an essay.
Right.
And it was like 10 o'clock on a Sunday. I'd probably had like 4 hours of sleep. And then I was still hungover, still drunk, hungover. And just to get myself right, I had probably like 5 bowls of that chili and probably a good like 7 cups of those wine, cups of wine. And then, took the pills, All right, that's fine. See ya. Left at 5. Came back the next time, but I wasn't hungover at all. I got plenty of sleep. I wasn't drunk.
Yeah.
I was fresh as a daisy.
Yeah.
And they come up and they give me 5 bowls at 10 in the morning.
Because
I haven't even had any coffee.
Because that's what you had done before?
Yes, I had to match each time. Like, what? No. Like, yeah, you have to eat 5 bowls of chili, and you have to have 7 glasses of this shitty wine, and then hang out with a bunch of losers in this like rec room. It was like the waiting room of a Durham, North Carolina bus station at like 3 a.m. with like a little, 15-inch TV that's showing some game, and that's it, and some old, Field and Stream magazines all day, like with just the worst pain. It was awful. And then they give you might get placebos. Like, this isn't helping me. This pill doesn't work. Oh.
No, that's fucking beautiful. And then I remember you were driving around that fucking van delivering fucking envelopes for that goddamn place in Cambridge.
Oh, yeah.
God, there were some good ones. All right. So when you decided to leave Boston, though, like, what I'm curious about is that, so you left the Chipmunk movie we'll get to. Why didn't you want to leave? What made you leave?
Cross Comedy was kind of really reaching a very kind of a place that I wanted it, which I'd dreamed of. Like, we were being courted by SNL. They were bringing us to New York, putting us up, trying to, we were showcasing. People were coming up to Boston. People from New York were coming up to Boston to look at the shows.
So let me just tell the audience. I mean, this was a sketch show that featured you, John Innes, Lorne Dombrowski, John Groff,
Paul Kozlowski, John Benjamin, Sam Cedar, and all you guys would. Every week there was one of you guys. Oh, Carrie Prusa. I know I'm forgetting people.
Carrie Prusa, Cristino occasionally,
Jim DeCroto,
Waterman.
Oh, Earl Waterman, yeah. And, you and Louie and Janine and Laura Keitlinger, and, I mean, people would be coming in from out of town.
You created this, it was really, I think, one of the first, sketch troupes, or not even, I don't know if I would call it that, but like a scripted sketch show that kind of came about organically with all stand-ups, really, other than Carrie.
Yeah, and it initially, as you and I sat down and wrote this thing up for Robin Horton, the catch guy, initially it was, it took a while to evolve out of there to more of a pure show, but it was kind of to take the piss out of those comics and stand-up and open mic nights. And it would evolve from an open mic night that I hosted where Robin asked me to host whatever Tuesday's showcase night or whatever. And then, so we had fake comics. We had people being fake comics. We had plants in the audience.
Right.
There would be 5 legitimate stand-ups who would, set the tone for the evening, and for a good half a year, nobody, I mean, cool people would come in and heard about it and would come in, but all the people, the tourists and stuff that were coming had no idea. 80% of the audience had no idea what we were doing. And then it would be full on show with videotapes, and we would leave through a back door, and the video screen would go, and we'd continue the bit that we had pre-taped. And we had themes to them, very kind of a lot of early Mr. Show ideas where there was a beginning, middle, and end. And it was kind of paid off, and themes, and then it evolved from there after. I don't know, after about a year and a half.
So in 92, people were starting to really realize it?
Yeah, we had a run at the Charles Playhouse.
That's right.
Yeah, we had bands playing.
Right.
And, did kind of best of stuff, and Louis C.K. would make short films, and we'd show those, and it was a really cool night, Did
you meet with Lorne and everything?
I did meet with Lorne, but that was after I'd moved to L.A. Jim Downey was amazingly nice and sweet and really instrumental whether he knows it or not. He gave me an open invitation to come there and write SNL. And when I was a kid, that was literally all I wanted to do was SNL.
Right.
And I remember visiting and later on visiting in the Sarah Silverman, Dave Attell period. And when those guys were writing on there, and that's going way back, Janine, I think. I don't know if it's pre or post, but it was right around there, Laura Keitlinger. And I went and hung out with those guys, and they were all friends. I remember going to the writer's room, and they were just miserable. I mean, they were fucking miserable.
Yeah.
And it was such a poisonous atmosphere and this sense of competitive, like cutthroat competition that was foisted upon them, that they were put into in this tiny little box. And it was really it was a bummer. And I thought, wow, I don't want to do this. This seems terrible. And I honestly didn't think about it again.
You just let it go. The illusion was destroyed.
Yeah, I mean,
what SNL seasons had the most impact on you? Was it like the first one?
Oh, definitely the first stuff when I was a kid. I was like, I was a teenager.
Yeah, me too. Because like it's weird.
That thing didn't exist.
Yeah, and I got an email recently from a guy who's like, "Why do you keep talking about SNL? It sucks." And I'm like, "Well, it's SNL." And there have been good times and bad times.
For so long in the last, I'm pulling this number out of my ass, but let's say 20 years, it has been, it's all about kind of making a impact that night, ratings. They're getting people who are promoting a country western album and some dumb movie.
Right.
And that's what it is, And they have to service those people. They have to service Paris Hilton. They have to service these people. There's nothing interesting or engaging about them, and you're trying to get past that crap to get to the nuggets of and they've got amazingly talented people.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, just top notch. But, when you have to write a show in a week and you have to service somebody who's not funny or a good performer, and you have to service their personality, and you have to, a number of those sketches have to be about current pop culture bullshit that you or I, as adult males, don't give a shit about.
Right.
It's less of an engaging show, but it wasn't always like that. They had fucking Ron Ziegler on as a host. I mean, they had the coolest. It was an interesting show.
Yeah.
They had Elvis Costello on back when nobody knew who that was, and they had. Fear was on. I mean, they
remember
just had,
Fear because that was Belushi's band.
Yeah, they had it was a relevant show.
Yeah, who was your guy, Belushi?
No, Bill Murray.
Yeah,
Bill Murray was my guy. I mean, I liked all of them, but Bill Murray pretty much.
And so you met with Lorne. Was that an interesting encounter, or
it was only for its lack of interesting. I have one impression that I do of it, and I've only met him this one time, and I don't have anything negative to say about him at all. I only know him through this meeting. I just to give it a little backstory. This is back when Julia Sweeney was on the show, and they were going to hire some temporary writers to write for the women on the show, with them in mind. And because of my the past cross comedy stuff and Jim Downey, and because of Julia, and I knew some of the other people, I got they said, "Oh, you should meet with Cross. He's here. He did this thing. He worked on the Stiller Show, and blah blah." So I had a meeting with him. I didn't know. The first impression is, first of all, we talked for about 40 minutes.
Yeah,
and I left that meeting, and I could not tell you, to this day, I can't tell you whether he liked me, whether he was impressed with me, what he thought of me. I just, after 40 minutes, just don't know. When I came out of there, my friends were like, "Holy shit, you talked to him for 40 minutes. That's amazing. He must love you." And I was like, "Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good." And this is my very brief, encapsulated impression of my 40 minutes, in that I'll be Lorne, and I'll ask you a question.
Okay.
All right. So, David, what do you think of alternative comedy?
Well, it's
because I'll tell you what I think. It's and it was like that for about 40 minutes. And again, that's not like a negative thing. I didn't leave there going like, what a dick. I left there with I had no idea what he thought of me. Or
it's interesting though, because that whole thing stuck in his craw. Because when I had the meeting with him, he was like, I don't know what you think you're doing below 14th Street. Yeah. And I'm like, what? We're just doing shows.
And that, when I say that, I don't, I'm not making that question up, because I remember that question more than anything.
It definitely fucked with him.
And I was thrown off a little bit because he clearly.
It was because it had gotten an attention in the New York Times.
Yeah.
And but whatever. So when you moved to LA, it was to do the Stiller show.
Yes, it was with the job. It was to move there. I had been in LA briefly in the 80s. That's a whole other story.
Not from when I first ran into you with my girlfriend, who I chased down to the college, who was at summer school, and you were staying at a college dorm on the floor.
No, that's going so far back.
With John Ennis.
Yeah. And that was in the back of that was in a supply closet in the back of a kitchen at a frat in Westwood. That's
right. And I remember you had this amazing, business idea. You went and somewhere you bought
I didn't buy it. I stole it.
You stole
about the jewelry?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was working at a jewelry place, and
in what capacity?
Just whatever. A girl that I had a very, very brief, ill-fated kind of fling with that wasn't even a fling, but a relationship with, whatever. Had friends out in LA, and when I was going to LA, she hooked me up with them to get a job, and because initially I didn't, Ennis was selling weed, and we were living in that car, and that was in the very beginning, and then things kind of panned out. We got a place to stay, and I got some money from somewhere. I don't know. I remember winning $45 playing Trivial Pursuit, and that sort of was rent for a week. And
that must have been like what, 87?
86, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you were working at this jewelry store.
So I'm working. It wasn't a store. It was they manufactured it, and I would do everything from collections to shipping to just.
But it was crap.
It was crap, but they were very nice to hire me, and they were happy to have me there. And occasionally I'd go back to their place, the people who owned it, and I would do some babysitting or something, or just whatever. They're very nice to me, and then they'd give me money to take a cab, because I was living in Koreatown. Yeah. And I would just pocket the money and take a bus and sit on the bus. And I was just high constantly. I'd wake and bake. It took me 3 buses to get there. I was in Koreatown. It was off Cloverfield and like in the 20s in Santa Monica. And then I'd go to this shitty job, and and I wait, were you at the Comedy Store? You were.
No, no, what it was like Sarah had that I had dated her, and then she went away for the summer to do summer school, and she was at UCLA and staying at that place where you and I guess you or John Ennis were seeing some girl who lived there. And like it was at that frat house in Westwood, because I chased her down because I got jealous.
Oh, right. That's when I ran into you. Yeah.
Right. And I ended up staying with her, and I was furious because I thought she was fucking somebody else. And you and I only knew each other vaguely from meeting, when you were at Emerson. We met at Stitches. So we were not, it wasn't like we weren't established or anything.
Oh my gosh.
I was just completely surprised to see you. And there I was, jealous and freaked out, imposing on this girl. And then you and John come out of nowhere, and you were fucking hilarious. Yeah. I just remember sitting around getting high and playing guitar, and you did, I have a never ending song of love for you. And you guys were just so fucking hilarious. And then I just remember we were all going to the beach, and we were hungover, and you had this this tablecloth and all these fucked up earrings, and you were going to sit there in Venice and sell these earrings.
Well, to our credit, we did have as I was saying before, I'd just take little things I'd take a glue gun, I'd take glue sticks one day, I'd take some, the ceramics the other day, I'd take the backing the other day. And then eventually compiled enough of them so that we had this tray, and and John and I had a whole spiel, and we just set up on the boardwalk in Venice. They're like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, mother, kid tested, mother approved. You're going to love these earrings. And we had this pattern. We had an act. And then, somebody there was a some syndicated show called Putting on the Hits, where you'd lip sync.
Yeah.
And they stroll by and like, hey, you guys got some funny shtick. Mm-hmm. We're going to put you on Putting on the Hits. Yeah, great. And they filmed us, just doing our thing for about 2-3 minutes. Of course, we told everybody we were going to be on TV. Never made it on.
Yeah.
We made people sit through that stupid show. But we didn't sell too many. We sold a handful, but then we were really high, and this woman goes to buy the earrings, and as she's buying them, the backing comes off.
Yeah.
And just the glue is like, it's a big strand. It looks like honey. And she's like, well, what's going on? I'm not going to buy this. I want my money back. And, as I was really high, and it was like, oh no, that just happened because of the sun. It'll, and she's like, so I'm not allowed to wear these outside? Preferably they're indoor earrings. Just the dumbest. And it was pretty much what ended.
That was the end of that business.
Yeah, we were
were you part of that thing where, like, when we were in college, Catch a Rising Star auditioned a bunch of people to do that Catch a Rising Star live on campus?
No, but that's what John was. John did that.
Right. That's where I first met John Innes and Joe Murphy.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think they did a bit together. It was almost Python-esque bit.
Yeah, John and Joe were very, very close, and we were in a sketch group in college at Emerson together called This Is Pathetic.
Right. Well, let's get back to, so you're going to L.A. with a job.
Yes, I went to L.A. with a job and a lot of attitude, which I regret. I'm a bit embarrassed by, but
which attitude? The everything sucks. This is real comedy.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember being at a loft party. In fact, Morphine was playing. I think Morphine had just started and formed.
Yeah.
And I was there. I had talked to Tim Sarkis, who's now my manager.
Yeah.
Who kind of facilitated the stuff after Janine Garofalo had me send writing samples from Cross Comedy to Ben Stiller's show, and Judd Apatow and Ben, and I got the offer. But it was one of those things like, you have to be here right now. You have to be here in 3 days.
Right.
And I remember it's so embarrassing and so pretentious, like sitting there. I had gotten off the phone, and I'm there with my plastic thing, a shitty keg beer. I'm sure I was with Rivers.
Yeah.
And I was just going like, everything's going to change. That's all. And I was right, but I was also such an artsy douche about it. Like,
yeah.
I don't know, man. L.A., Hollywood, fuck. Bunch of prostitutes.
Yeah.
Artistic prostitutes. Everything's going to change. My whole life is going to change. Just awful.
What life? What?
I know. Well, that's the other thing. But the thing that made me accept it in my heart so quickly, even though externally I was like, I don't know, man, I'm struggling with this idea. I was so fucking over being poor. And you remember the last apartment I was in, which you called the Loser Museum, or maybe that was Fraser.
Yeah, well, I used to stay there occasionally when you were your girlfriends. Yeah,
at the projects.
Yeah,
roach infested.
Yeah.
We'd turn up the oven for heat.
Yeah,
and Boston winter is just a depressing area that hadn't been built.
Remember those sandwiches though? The meat sandwiches, the 4 or 5 meat sandwich from that Five Guys place or whatever, right?
No, Hi-Fi. On Mass Ave.
Yeah.
That place was amazing.
The meat bomb. The meat bomb. Holy fuck.
That was insane.
It was sausage, steak,
pepperoni, steak, meatballs. What else would they have? It was all
and
hot
roast
stuff.
And the cheesesteak stuff.
Oh man, it was crazy.
God, it was fucking great. Oh yeah.
I was so tired of being poor, and
meat bombs and skin rashes. That's what I remember about those days.
A lot of ramen.
Yeah.
And I knew every happy hour in Cambridge and Boston
so where to eat dinner,
where to get the all you can eat wings if you buy a pint of Schlitz or whatever.
Oh God. Good times. All right, so we're getting mired in the past. So okay, so you go there and you get the gig, and you're with Ben and Judd and Bob and you write the fuck out of that stuff.
Yeah, I was there. It was very intense, very quickly. I had never written in that way, and I've never been in that atmosphere before. I couldn't have told you anything about how a TV show works and the writing staff. I mean, literally, the only thing I knew was Mary Tyler Moore or the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Right.
And I was not used to writing for somebody else, and in particular for somebody else who was really wanted to focus on like impressions and parodies, specific parodies. Ben, yeah, and you know, I got one. I contributed to a bunch of things here and there, like just added a line or two, if that much, for certain other things. There were a couple things we did that we shot once, and I don't think aired. This thing that was supposed to be a running thing, and then I only really did two on my own, two bits that were on there. It was this
the Pooter Toots bit,
TGO Pooter Toots.
That was the best bit.
That sort of shows an early example of how my sketches, and even, you know, to my stand-up at my old kind of conceptual stuff, had like a twist to it. Like it started this way and had a twist, but and also then there was like a story told.
And the theme was, you know, definitely anti-corporate and definitely satirical in the sense of how that, you know, how, you know, what corporations are in a way.
I guess. But
well, you were talking about a franchise food business that was based on capitalism and the
you're reading way more. You're giving me much more credit than I.
Well, but not really. I mean, but it comes out of your head, and then, you know, as your stand-up evolved, I mean, those are themes that you deal with. I
guess, but it was. But I did that, and then The Last Scout, which was, or A Few Good Men, or something like that. Yeah. Few Good Scouts, whatever it was. But those are the only two bits, because I was a mid-season replacement. That's why they were like, hung up the phone, you have to be out here, you know.
And did you get along with Ben and Andy and everybody? And yeah, I mean,
I had met Ben before that briefly with Janine at the Snake Pit, and we I had been out visiting LA, and this is before the show started up, and you know, we all got along. It was right, but I didn't really.
And Judd,
I hung out with less, and I mean, that guy was super busy. Everybody was busy, but he was
writing for Shandling, writing for
he was I mean, and he's producing the show, running the show, and you know, he was very busy. There was nobody really hung out socially, which I think was the most immediate strange thing to me that I figured out within the first 2 days of work, that people just didn't hang out socially.
Yeah. This wasn't about friends or drinking beer.
No, I mean, I came to learn that, but, you know, I can't say that it's been like that with any of my other shows. Like Mr. Show, we all hung out all the time. I think it engenders, you know.
Well, what was the evolution of that? Because were you writing with Bob at Ben Stiller?
No. And Bob and I did not get along. I didn't like him very much. He was abrasive. He was clearly funny and a really good writer. Yeah. But he was a dick. Was
it that weird kind of acted like your dad thing? What have you got going on, David?
No, we didn't even. He kind of fucked with me too. Yeah. I mean, like, I think enjoyed putting me in this spot, and why. I don't necessarily blame him. I was very, very green. I'd never done anything before, and they're probably going, "Who's this kid?" They're, you know.
But also, you're completely different than him. I mean, he is a sort of controlling workaholic, and you're out of control alcoholic.
Yeah, and I was very carefree about stuff, and I was very. I didn't respect the institution,
right?
And I didn't approach things in the same way. And after work, I would get any of the other writers that I could. It was mostly Brent Forrester and occasionally Rob Cohen. And please, can we go to the Snake Pit? It was this bar that was not too far from the where we worked, the offices. You know, I just want to hang out. Let's find out about each other. Let's shoot the shit. We're all funny, right? Let's socialize. But most people would go their separate ways, and there really was very little socializing. And then when they're in production, I mean, they're working, they're busy. Yeah. But so I was mostly being the other writers.
Yeah.
But it was like pulling teeth to get anybody to hang out, and that's just not the way. That's just not my personality, you know. And on any show subsequently that I've worked on, you know, you hang out. I mean, it's your writing staff. Right. I assume you hired them for a reason. You know, and so any show, Mr. Show or anything I've done.
Well, so then how, if you and Bob didn't get along, how did you end up working together?
After the Stiller Show ended, and, we still had mutual friends, and I had just fucking moved out here, and I had just been thrown into this thing, and I was still very, very close with Janine, and Janine was dating Bob, and so we ended up hanging out more, and he became, especially out of that environment, just sort of fucking around. I think he saw that I was funny and kind of worth his attention, and then eventually, I can tell you the first time that I remember us really connecting. It was a party at Laura Milligan's at her old place with Jerry Finelli and that crazy nonsense over there. And we were at some party, and we were in the kitchen, which was a kind of tight, cramped thing at Milligan's, and we started riffing the bit that eventually became the can't remember the name of it, but the pot, the pan, selling the pans, whatever that thing was. Right, it was an early Mr. Show sketch. Kiss the pan kisses you back, and all that stuff. And we just sort of riffed on that, his character and my character, and just sort of doing this goofy stuff. And that was and just making each other laugh. And that was the first time I remember really connecting in that extra level way. And then shortly after that, around that time, was all the Diamond Club shows. Which I would imagine dozens of people have mentioned on this podcast.
No one has.
No, get out of here. The Diamond Club shows?
No, I don't even know what they are.
No, you know what I'm talking about. The shows at the back of that disco in Hollywood. That's where Tenacious D kind of started, and Mr. Show basically started. But before it was Mr. Show, and we had these. Dave Rath was putting together these people, and we'd have a night, and I did some stuff on Bob's sketch night, and Bob did some stuff with me, and we wrote together, and we wrote these ideas. And on both of our shows, which I think were like back to back, week to week, one week after the other, and they were clearly, we had written these other things and did some stuff with other people, but those were on both our nights, like, just stand out. And then we decided, well, let's write a thing together. And it was just, to this day, the most effortless I've ever written, where we were just totally on the same page, elevating each other's idea, kind of editing it in the right way, and adding elements and taking it from putting a left turn where a left turn should be, and just creating these really cool bits and fleshing them out and giving them depth, and it really was just effortless. We were making each other laugh and doing that, and then we put these shows together, and they were great.
And you drew from some of your friends from Cross Comedy?
Yeah. And I had gone to Al's Bar in downtown.
I remember that place.
Yeah, for this thing called No Talent Night.
Right.
This is like in 93, 94. And just looking for people before we had Mr. Show, when it was like sketches and stuff. I was like, I want to find a good comedy novelty song thing to do. And so I went to No Talent Night, thinking I'd see like a guy juggling on rollerblades or whatever, and like, oh, you want to do 5 minutes of the show? And that's when I first saw Tenacious D, and they had 3 songs, or 2. They had 2 songs, and I went up to him, and I thought Kyle was the leader. Yeah, that's how clueless I was. And I approached him afterwards, like, "This is Jack," and because I've always had this problem. I still have it to this day. I take things way too literally that are just throwaway things that people say are metaphorical. And it was Greatest Song in the World tribute. And he's in the song, he calls Jack his brother. Yeah. Jack calls Kyle his brother. So I was like, oh, they're brothers. Yeah. Okay. And I'm talking to him like, hey, I talked to your brother, and it's like some nerdy white guy, promoter guy. Hi, I talked to your brother. You seem awfully funny. Yeah. And I gave him my information. I told him I was doing this show, and I don't know what they initially thought of me, but then that was like their I just facilitated an introduction to that world, you know.
Well, how did like Jay get involved? And
Jay, that was Jay was from Chicago, and Paul Tompkins was from Philly. Some mutual friend of theirs put them together and said, you should meet this guy. I think your sensibilities would match. So those guys got together. They had just not been in LA very long, and they put together, to this day, I would say it's one of the, if not the funniest sketch show I've ever seen in my life. It was called The Skates, and they did like 5 or 6 bits, and they were genius. And they worked really well together. They were two very distinct performers and personalities. I think Jay had done a lot of stage stuff in Chicago. I don't think Paul did much sketch stuff, but he was like starting his stand-up, and he has a very unique, persona and stand-up as well. And they just really, almost like Bob and I are completely different people. They're different, but it was a great mix. The writing was fucking so funny, top notch. I loved it. And
there's Paul F. Tompkins and Jay
Johnston.
Yeah.
But they came on when we were already doing the show. We had done the stage show enough, and I think at that point it sold the show idea to HBO.
So what point were you in Aspen? There's 95, I think, at the Aspen Comedy Festival.
Yeah.
Because that's what I remember. I remember that
were you at that show? That was brutal.
Yeah, it was at this weird saloon. It was like a like a theater in the round. You were literally in some sort of pit.
It was a cowboy bar.
Yeah, it was like you were like in a pit.
With like its own little... I mean, they manufactured...
It was a dance floor.
A dance floor. They manufactured...
and you were showcasing for Brillstein, right?
For HBO. Brillstein was the one who kind of got us there,
and that was when
made HBO give us a slot.
And that was when that was sort of, that festival was really sort of like, take a look at what we might do.
Yeah.
And that was also the first time I saw Bernie Brillstein in person, and it was in the bathroom. And I'd walked into the bathroom, and he was at a urinal with his entire pants down around his ankles. He was standing up against the urinal.
He was a big boy.
Yeah, with his pants down. And I'm like, that's Bernie Brillstein. Yeah.
He didn't have much of a choice. That guy is a fucking legend, man. I'm nothing but superlatives to say. I'm so happy I got to meet him, and he was a part of my life before he died. He's just a legend. Amazing guy.
Yeah.
Amazing. Cool.
Did you spend time with him?
I did. I mean, over the years, yeah. He was a producer of Mr. Show and subsequent other things. And I just, I think the greatest guy I've met in Hollywood, in that world. Just
why?
His stories. He's there's no bullshit.
Yeah.
He's a nice guy. He's magnanimous. He's legendary, and his stories are almost Forrest Gumpian of like, he was at Lenny Bruce's Carnegie Hall concert kind of by chance. He discovered the Muppets by chance. Like, and he started out, I think he's one of those William Morris mailroom guys.
Oh yeah.
And, he produced Hee Haw.
Yeah.
I mean, just stuff like, what? You did Hee Haw? I didn't know. What did I didn't give a fuck. I didn't know what I was doing.
So why did Mr. Show, how many episodes did you do? How many seasons?
4 seasons, but 2 of them were very truncated. The first was, an experimental 4, and then we got to do 2 more the next year.
2 more 4s?
We did 4, and then we did 6.
Yeah.
Then we did 10, and then another 10. And then we did 3 best ofs that were all their own unique self-package. We'd stick things into this other kind of...
And you toured a little bit with it live?
Yeah, I wish we had done more. We did a show in 2004, I want to say, called Hooray for America, which is based on a script Bob and I wrote.
And did really you feel like did you feel like it was done, or were you mad that it was over?
Both. I knew it was done for me, and I felt
why?
An immense... I just didn't want to have that life anymore. It was... You had no personal life, and we worked really, really hard. We worked in every single capacity of that thing, where we would Bob and I would meet before the writers even came in officially. We'd meet for weeks and come up with ideas and write some bits. Then the writers would come in, and then you're pre-producing, producing, doing the post on it. And then as you're finished the last post and you've turned it in, then you have to start doing press for that thing that's coming up. And it was 9.5 months. You had 2.5 months off.
And Bob is so diligent and so bizarrely driven.
I've never worked that hard in my life.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it, and I'm glad I did. And it taught me how to work hard on other things. And I don't regret any of that. But it also, after 4 years, was like, okay. And
Have you had enough of each other?
Oh, I don't think it was that. It was just, I just wanted to move on. In my career and in my personal life. And I didn't want to live in LA. And then when they moved the show from Fridays, it's Comedy Block, HBO's Comedy Block with the Chris Rock show and Mr. Show, and they moved us to Monday at midnight. It's over. Yeah. It was over.
Yeah.
It was done.
They put you out to pasture. Now, when you decided on the cargo shorts?
Mm-hmm. That was a conscious decision I made.
And Bob made the suit. Was that a discussion you had?
That was based on how, and there was never any discussion, outside of like, oh, what should we wear? I don't know, wear what we normally wear. When we did the stage shows, we never talked about it. Bob would wear a suit. That's what he felt comfortable in. He'd wear a suit. He wore a suit when he did his one-man shows, And you know me, when I did stand-up, I'd have shorts and a T-shirt and a flannel. Yeah.
So that was it.
That was it. We were just like, you be you, I'll be me, and that's how we'll dress. And guess what? It's fucking hot in LA most of the time. So I was about comfort. Obviously, I'm not a fashion icon.
Well, the reason why it's so important to, all this stuff is that for a lot of comedy nerds, those shows, Ben Stiller and Mr. Show, were like really starting points for a lot of things. Yeah. And like you look at the guys that wrote for that, like Aukerman and Dino and Jay and Brian Posehn and, all those guys, went on to big careers. What happened with the movie?
With the Run Ronnie Run?
Yeah.
Man, that's such a long,
all right,
depressing, boring story. It was a creative collective that we all assumed was going to work the same way we did, and it did on Mr. Show. Turned out not to be that way, much to the dismay of Bob and I, and there were personal fallings outs for I think obvious reasons, and then just a bit of a power move, and that combined with the unfortunate timing of Mike DeLuca, who was at New Line, who championed the script, being fired while we were in production, and so nobody wanted to do anything with it, and that combined with a very just primitive, uncreative, ignorant idea of marketing the film and what the film was, and we just lost, all control. And is
there bad blood between any of the people on the creative side?
It's been smoothed over. I know Bob and Troy have.
Troy was the producer of Mr. Show?
Director. Yeah, he was a producer director. He was amazing.
At Dakota?
At Dakota. He was as instrumental for the show's success as Bob and I was. He was what he did for no budget. He was really, really important. He was the kind of the guy behind the scenes who was. I say without hesitation, he was as important as any other element. And we made our piece. Bob and he had made their piece, and I've worked with him a couple times, since then, and he's a really talented guy. I just think it was unfortunate the way everything. Well, I know it's unfortunate, and that movie is 30% of what it could be. I think it could have been a really funny, cool, interesting Mr. Show type movie. And also, I should say, in fairness, our initial script, and we did like numerous revisions. The Ronnie Dobbs story was only a third of the story. That was the thread that took you to these other, I think, very cleverly as they went cross country to these other sketches. Yeah. And it became less and less of that with our New Line notes and more.
So it was a classic story of the studio fucking everything up. Now let me just get to this so we, before we run out of steam, that it seems to me that, your evolution as a stand-up, in your later career, the big shift was that you were able to play off the popularity of Mixture Show and draw in an automatic audience.
Sure.
And then begin to say what you're really feeling.
And that's what makes you change.
Right.
Because as I, referenced before, all of a sudden I couldn't do any of those other things. You can't do characters or you're going to look like a fucking John Leguizamo douche,
right.
So you can't do any of that stuff. And, and I always had a distaste for the kind of people who just did 90% of their stuff was just pop culture shit. And I still have a distaste for it, and I don't respect it, and I don't care about that stuff. And yeah, I mean, it forces you to do other stuff, and that I eventually in the last tour and DVD and special and all that shit I did was much more personal stuff, more anecdotal. I just talked about the decades and decades of drug and alcohol abuse and what that's turned me into now that I'm 47 and I'm starting to pay the price for that.
In what way are you paying the price for it?
Loose bowels.
Oh, okay.
And
you've always had that.
It's reached
all right.
a new level. It's more than that. It's that's the easy jokey thing to say, but there are consequences to back when you're younger and you're
but you're all right.
You're immortal and I'm fine. I'm in better health than I should be. And when I turned 40, I went and got a full physical, blood, stool, urine, everything, heart rate. I mean, everything, full on, everything you can possibly do. And I was, as you might imagine, I was like, okay, I've really abused myself for a long, long time, and I'm waiting to hear this terrible report. And I told the doctor, I was like, there's no reason to lie, I know it's going to be on a record. And I told him what I did. I told him what my nights were like and back when I
mostly
first
booze though, weren't you?
No, not just. I mean, there was that, but when I moved to New York,
you got into pharmaceuticals, right?
Everything, man. I got into the stuff that the last thing you're ever supposed to do, right? We know what I'm talking about. So, I mean, there was a period where it was like,
I heard about you during that period, and I was concerned that you were putting like,
it was pretty bad.
You were putting, what was that, that you needed something in the rider that, that it was, what was that stuff they give babies to?
Oh, Pedialyte? Yeah.
Yeah, you had to have Pedialyte. That was your miracle cure. And at some point you were carrying around a fishing tackle box of pills and things. Yeah,
I mean, I don't, that was a pretty, in a relative sense, a pretty short period. I mean, that was when I first moved to New York.
Because I always knew you could put away alcohol, but there was a period there where I wasn't in touch with your life, and I'm like, oh God, is he all right? Do I need to make a phone call?
I mean, I could have teetered and not been all right, but I was all right.
Well, you're pretty much, you're at the core, you're a fairly practical guy.
Yeah, I like to think so.
Yeah.
In fact, the one time it might be one of the most important decisions and moments of my life. I was in London. This is past when I'd gotten past the really bad period.
But your physical you came back okay, as I assume.
I came back okay, and I was shocked, and I kind of, it might have been the worst news that you could have given me, because then I went out and celebrated for the next 4 years, but like, really? There's nothing wrong. You checked, and I told you about my,
Is that my name on the top of the chart?
Yeah. I think I've told you the story about doing crack. It was the only time I've done crack.
I don't know if you did.
I was there. I was doing shows. I was doing a month at the Soho Theater. Doing 6 shows.
I've done that
a
place.
week.
It's good. Yeah.
It's great. Yeah.
Nice little theater. Yeah.
And did you ever go to Camden when you were there? Camden Town.
Mm-mm.
There's a guy who's pretty well known. He's
crack
guy. Well, but he's also a rockabilly guy. Super tall. He plays at the back of this fish and chips place in Camden, and he's like a local town
hero,
and he's good. He's really good. But he's a drug addict, and And I ended up back at his place with some friends and then some new friends. And his place was
and then a third set of friends that might steal things from you.
Filthy.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like this, but if all this stuff was messy and just chaotic, like Hoarders. It was like an episode of Hoarders.
Yeah.
Dirty bedsit in Camden, up third floor of this like council flat or whatever. Yeah. And there was literally a what do you call it? A fish tank with dirty dishes in it. Like a shitty art director came in and said, "Wait, put this in here." And we did crack. Yeah. And I'd never smoked crack before, and that's my preference, is the upper stuff. Yeah. And I immediately like, holy shit, this is the greatest thing ever. This is amazing. I get it. I totally get it. And
I want more.
I want more immediately. I've never experienced that. Yeah. Like, I want more. This is great. Yeah. There was no real come down. I didn't struggle with that at all, but I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. Yeah. And, I'd had plenty of speed before in different ways. And it was kind of like that, but times 10. Yeah. And I loved it. And I was I was happy. I would happily sit and talk to fucking toothless idiots for 3 hours if I could just, every.
That's weird, because you were never really a Coke guy when I knew you. But, because that's what Coke will do to you, too.
Yeah, but Coke it's different.
Yeah, it's not as intense.
It's not as intense, and it's, Coke's more annoying.
Right.
I have nothing against Coke. I don't
think Coke took anything personally.
Yeah. I just want, I don't want to sound like I'm preaching like, oh, Coke's bullshit. I mean, Coke's fine. It's way overrated. It's overhyped. Okay. It's not that big a deal.
We understand your position on Coke.
Okay. But anyway.
Yeah. So you're talking to toothless idiots for hours about their...
Yeah, and then we eventually ran out of crack, and he's like, oh, let's get some more. And I really wanted some more. But at this point, it's like 5:30, 6 in the morning. Sure. I have a show to do. Yeah. I swore many, many years ago, I swore to myself that I would never, ever, ever cancel a show because I was fucked up. And if I did that, then I've reached a turning point. And... which meant that I was going to have to go do that show, and I was going to have to fucking struggle through it. Yeah, sweating and to teach myself a lesson. And I was a professional and blah blah. And I knew that if I stayed around, even though I wanted to, I really wanted to. If I stayed around, that my life would change.
Right, you're at a crossroads.
I was literally at a figurative crossroads. Yeah, and I knew that. I would have canceled my show, and, the whole run was sold out and everything. And the reason I canceled it was because I was smoking crack, and I don't ever want to become that person. I'm stronger than that. I'd always been stronger than that. And I left, and I did the show. I kind of probably got normal and sobered up around, probably an hour before the show, went home, slept as much as I could. And,
God, that's the worst sleep.
Yeah, it was very fitful. It was also during this brutal summer that England was going through, and there was no ventilation in the studio in the flat I was staying in. It was really just ugly, and bad sweaty.
And your brain aches.
Yeah, but I did the show, and it was fine. Yeah, and I was back to normal.
No one knew the turmoil.
No one knew
that you were at a crossroads just hours before.
Yeah, and I so wanted to stay there, and I knew if I did that I would become that person, and so yeah, my record's still good, and I have not done crack since.
But ever. So have you tempered your lifestyle a great deal? I noticed you had some tea and.
Well, for practical reasons, yeah. I when I'm working, I don't indulge.
But what is your primary indulgence? Still booze, right?
It's whatever's there. Yeah. It is and will be, I think, just for accessibility, it'll be beer. Alcohol. Yeah, definitely. And I like alcohol, and I like I like the sociability of it. You know,
sure.
I don't sit and drink by myself, but I like going out, and I happen to live in a city that's conducive to that kind of thing, and even London too. When I was there,
you got big tolerance too, though. I mean,
I do. I have a strange, for my size and physical makeup, I have a strange resiliency, but
and you never got bloated and weird. And sweaty.
Well, you know, I'm 47, and you know, I've had definite stages where my metabolism has slowed down, and when I go to London, within 3 days, I've put on 5 pounds.
Yeah,
and it'll stay. It won't go past that really, but you feel it. You carry it around, and I have a fairly small frame, so like 5 pounds all just in my gut, and it's beer.
Yeah. You seem to have found some sort of weird, home in London around, what you do, and a sort of an appreciation for it.
I love it now. I mean, I kind of vacillated on whether I liked it or not. And it got lonely a lot when Amber wasn't there. And
are you getting married?
I am, yeah.
How old is she?
She will be 29 when we're married.
Yeah. I'm dating a woman the same age. You okay with it?
Yeah, it never really, I mean, my dumb joke is that it never really comes up unless we're discussing drum and bass.
Yeah.
And, the age difference. But it really doesn't. I mean, occasionally there's a reference. But
do you ever have that moment where you're like, I'm going to be old. She's going to be 33.
I mean, I have moments where I think it isn't even later, because I think it even means less later, but I have, I sold my place in the East Village, and I've been looking to get out of there for about 5 years now, and I feel, we're going to go to Brooklyn and rent for a year and see how we like it, and I feel guilty because a lot of the motivation is like, you know what, I've done this, I've been doing this for as we've been discussing, I've been doing this since I was a teenager.
Right, you want to relax already.
And I just don't, that's not my, I'm not going to go out going to see bands all night and then go drink with the, cast of whatever and, do shots. I'll do that once in a while, but it used to be all the time. And I feel like I'm taking, because of, and this is specifically because of age equaling experience and equaling like, all right, I'm done with that.
Yeah.
That I feel like I'm taking that away from her if she's at the age where it's like she wants to do that.
Right.
I feel like, I've done it. I've been doing it for years. And that's one kind of slight guilt I feel.
I guess my feeling is that like, I've been through a lot, and I've been through, a couple of marriages, and I've had my heart broken in a fairly dramatic way. That my fear is that as I get older and more vulnerable because of that I just don't know if I could take problems.
You think you get more vulnerable or less?
No, more.
You think you have a hardened shell now?
No, because like I don't know that I ever opened up fully, and now like I'm starting to relax and I'm more comfortable with myself. So I want to have that open so I can have those feelings, and I just don't know if I can bounce back from another fucking dramatic heartbreak.
Right.
But
well, that's
possible. We're built to deal with it. Whatever.
But I mean, it's a good, it's an interesting point.
You know what I haven't asked you is like, I've known you a long time. I know, is your mom all right?
Yeah, she's fine.
And your sis?
Yeah, well, I have two, there's the one I'm close with.
Yeah.
She's doing great. She has her own food truck in Atlanta, which is doing really, really well. Really well.
Oh, that's right. And then you have the one that's sort of gone the way of the townie.
Oh God. Well, she's in a trailer park and, with her.
In Atlanta?
No, she's in North Carolina.
She upgraded. Or something.
I'm not sure about that, but she's, I mean, that's...
Everybody's good?
Everybody's fine.
As you've gotten more successful, have you ever sought out your old man at all?
No. Absolutely not. He lives up, he lives in the 60s in New York. He lives not, I'm sure I passed by, I don't know where he is, but I'm sure I've ridden my bike past his
when was the last time you had any interaction with him?
I was 19. It was on the phone.
I'm trying to remember. I don't think I knew you then.
No. I don't think I hadn't moved to Boston yet. I was still in Atlanta.
So having grown up in that way where you don't have this father, do you feel resolution around that in your heart?
No, I mean, I'm resigned to what it's going to be and have been for a while. And I've never had that, not once have I ever had that moment of like, I should let bygones be bygones. And, there's nothing in it for me except anger and bitterness and recrimination. And I don't know why I would invite that. And he doesn't deserve the satisfaction. I know I'm being obstinate, I know there's a bit of, certainly stubbornness, but stubbornness is just something you apply to the situation. You can apply it or not apply it. It is not going to happen. Right.
This is something that I guess there's two ways you go with that, because he just left, right?
Yeah, but then we found out, Wendy and I found out all these shitty things over the years, subsequently, not immediately, but over the years, like, hey, remember this thing? What the real deal was this. And, and just shitty, bad. Yeah. Just, Yeah,
because I guess there's two ways you can go with that. Either like, I'll get peace with this on my own, or I can, tell him I forgive him or whatever, but then all of a sudden you give them
But I don't forgive him.
Right.
I don't, nor will I. And I hope that I will have children someday soon. We've talked about it, and I hope I am a exemplary, good, better father for it, because I know I just cannot wrap my head around. I know it exists. It exists everywhere, constantly throughout history. And I'm sure we wouldn't have to go far down your street to find somebody who's similar, but I don't understand father or mother who just doesn't care about their kids and their level of selfishness supersedes responsibility for a child. I don't understand it. I don't get it. It's soft and silly to say I have a lack of respect for it. I loathe it. I hate it. I don't like those people, and I don't. There's no excuse. Yeah. Yeah. It's just I just don't get it, and unfortunately in this world, that's how a lot of people are.
Yeah, in some form or another. Yeah, I mean, there's abandonment, but then there's just emotional neglect, and there's
and I know at some point, especially as it became the age of my dad. Was when he left and he had 3 kids. Like, I know that feeling.
How old were you when you left?
I just turned 10. Or was he there for my birthday? I was either about to turn 10 or 10. I think it was 10. I think I just turned 10.
And what preceded it? It was just him leaving?
Yeah, I mean...
was there an event, or he just split?
No. He sat us down and said... my mom and dad sat us down and said he had just moved us to Georgia from Syracuse or back to Georgia, I should say. And I've told you the stories. We had no money, zero, nothing. Yeah. And then, he basically left to go to Phoenix. He ended up in Phoenix, put us in Roswell, Georgia, owing a lot of money. My mom had no job. 3 kids. We had come from Syracuse. We got kicked out of there. And he chased this job in Georgia, which didn't pan out because, again, I was like 9 or 10. I subsequently came to find out all the lies and to understand his character and know who he was.
Is he a con man?
Not a con man. He didn't have like thought out cons. He was just he would misrepresent himself, lie about stuff. He was so proud he wouldn't. He was just a bit of a pathological liar, and he was the victim in everything. Right, and it was never his fault.
The world was against him.
Yeah, the world was against him, and if he was fired from a job, it wasn't his fault. And,
right.
Again, when you're 10 and I love my dad. I thought he was fucking awesome. You don't really have anywhere close to the full story, but as you grow up, you come to know more stuff. And my sister found out more stuff, and he just sort of sat us down. Your mom and I are going to get separated. he left. We didn't see him again for until my bar mitzvah, in which he took my bar mitzvah money, asked for it, and took it. But I was happy to give it to him because my dad was back in Georgia. Oh my God, this is great. And he, don't tell your mother.
Oh, really?
Don't tell anybody.
You sign checks over.
You got it, Dad. You got it. I need this to, then I can stay here and we can hang out. I just don't know that level of psychotic selfishness. And as I was saying before, like this idea that there's this guy who got married, had 3 kids. Who knows if he ever really loved my mother? And I just imagine him truly thinking, you know what? I don't like this being married thing. I don't like this lady. Maybe a kid will make me feel different. So he has a kid.
Right.
And then they end up having a couple more kids. He's like, nah, it's not for me. I'll see you guys later. Like, that is literally, it's a simplistic way to view it, but that's literally the mindset of this guy going, yeah, I gave it a shot, guys. You can't blame me. I thought it'd be my thing.
Thought you guys would be different.
It's not.
Yeah.
But, so I'm going to see you. I'm going out to the West Coast. Y'all take it easy. Definitely write.
Yeah.
Write me, call me.
Did you?
Oh, in the beginning, yeah. Oh, yeah. He's my dad. I loved him.
And now, has he reached out to you?
No. He's very stubborn as well.
Huh.
So it works out.
Yeah. Now, let's just address this and then we'll finish up. It just, like, how do you, because I know you have this weird contempt for the hypocrisy of hipsters and the whole sort of culture of I do too. But, yet we are embraced by it. So, how do you reconcile that on some level? That, on some level you are amongst peers.
No, but it's not the hypocrisy of hipsters. You have to be more specific about that. What I have contempt for is and it's not a strong contempt. I just have distaste for it. I don't like being around stereotypes of any nature.
Yeah, right. Or people who abide by
people who embody
the fashion.
Exactly.
Right.
And that is a subset of that. There's a stereotype to it.
I get it. Yeah.
There is it's the inherent hypocrisy is I'm so, counterculture. I'm not doing, that old joke of, it was, why did the hipster girl burn her mouth on the pizza?
Why?
Well, she wanted to eat it before it got cool. That kind of idea.
That's actually an old joke. You set that up like the classic Jewish joke.
No, you're right. That's not old. But it's that idea, I guess when I say it's old, it's just the idea's been there. It's talked about. You can apply it to hippies or beatniks.
Right. You can't wear wisdom or a life, just because you adapt to or
you just can't be on your MacBook on a blogging about steampunks and submitting yourself for the Mustache Awards and tweeting about some artesian honey place on your iPhone and be counterculture. You're not. It's just a joke. You can't wear those faux retro early 80s AIDS era kind of
all that shit's back, and say like,
and then say, look how cool I am,
or look how individual I am.
Exactly. Or counterculture. I'm counterculture.
You're in a room full of counterculture individualists who are all wearing roughly the same glasses.
What do you do? What do you do again? I don't watch TV.
Yeah.
The same person who
hate people who say that.
People who don't watch TV yet find literally without irony like, I don't watch TV, but we'll watch stuff on fucking Hulu on there.
But it's what's amazing to me is that, like, there was a time in my life where I would have said, like, I'm not watching TV, because I thought it was, the message was it's dumping shit in my brain. But now if someone says that to me, I go, what the fuck is wrong with you? There's great shit on television.
It's great stuff. Yeah.
I mean, what are you, stupid?
Yeah.
So how do you deal with people that accuse you of compromising or selling out with this chipmunk business?
Well, I don't anymore. I did. I made the mistake of engaging it early when I did the first one, and it certainly was more closer to me, because I had just done it. Yeah, I mean, it was.
They're vicious, those faceless idiots.
Yes, yeah, they're, and I felt that they kind of had a point, but then it took me a little while to.
But you knew that when he took the deal, right?
Yeah, I mean, also you're in a winless situation. Like, I can tell you, obviously I'm doing this on a podcast, so nobody's going to hear it. But if we were talking, I would say to you, and I made this point, and nobody wants to hear it, but if you and I were talking, you'd understand. I'd be like, dude, I had not worked for 6 months, which is an eternity. Right. I mean, 6 months is a long time. You just question everything.
No one's going to like me again. Come back. Right.
Am I ever going to work again?
Right.
It's a domino effect. You're not as creative. I'm trying to generate ideas, and nobody wants to hire you. And I took this job.
Well, it's interesting. It's very similar to throwing a fight. That it's like when you're a fighter, in the mob movies where you just like in Raging Bull, where you just slug it out, and then all of a sudden nothing's happening because you're gonna have to do one for the boys, in order to get your big shot. Right.
Yeah, that's an interesting analogy.
So you had to throw a fight.
So I did it, and it wasn't, I didn't do it because I needed the money, although they paid me a good, it wasn't a lot in the beginning, but the movie did so phenomenally well, I got a lot of bonuses and stuff. But initially the check wasn't that great. I just wanted to work, and I knew I was going to get shit, but I didn't know the level of vitriol and bile, and it was, and the reason it hurt and it landed was because I was feeling those things. I was like, oh my God, have I sold out?
Well, what's my integrity now?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then after a little while of that, I just sort of came around and said, well, look, here's why I did it.
Yeah.
I don't regret it.
Yeah.
I think that maybe it's getting older too, because there's been a good 6 years in between these 3 movies, and now I'm sort of resigned to it. And also, nobody gives a shit as nobody cares. They make the same jokes I do, or rather, I make the same jokes they do. And nobody truly gives a shit.
And also, it seems to me that, and these are other people I've spoken to about, similar opportunities and taking them, is that, people are going to play on your weakness around it because you are such an outspoken person around.
Of course.
Those issues.
That was the thing that bothered me. Am I going to be able to say anything again and have integrity?
But when it comes right down to it, you did a job for a paycheck in a family movie. Is there a crime in entertaining children on some level?
That's the other thing that I didn't. If I was smart, I would have addressed that in the beginning.
Right.
That this is a movie for 5-year-olds that 5-year-olds fucking love.
Yeah.
They love it. You and I, it's not for us.
Yeah.
And it's also not, I see worse shit out there.
Yeah,
it's not good, but it's not evil.
Right. No, of course not.
And, the fact that we're even defending it and talking about it is, we're saying the obvious stuff that we both know.
No, I know, but we have issues like this because, there is that weird feeling that, because when you come from a place that you and I come from, all you have is this weird honor system or this weird set of values that, you define yourself by, and you don't want to call bullshit if you're in bullshit.
And look, here's the other thing, that I'm not going to apologize for.
Yeah.
Is I made a shitload by the time the third movie came, because I was contractually obligated to do the second one and the third one.
Is there a fourth?
I'm not contracted to do that. I fulfilled my contract with 3.
And you made a shitload of money.
I made, certainly by the third one, because I exponentially went up each time. I made a lot of money. And the other, extenuating factor in this is that Mr. Show, I didn't make anything.
Yeah.
I never made a penny on the DVDs. They still say we owe money. It's bullshit. I never made any money on that. Busted my ass for 4 years. Todd Margaret, I lost money. I put in my own money so we could do the cenotaph scene. I put in my own money because we didn't have in the budget. So I lost money doing that show and spent a year in London by myself. And all the cool movies I do, Eternal Sunshine, Ghost World, all those things. I didn't make any money.
The Ginsberg one?
Yeah, you make scale.
Yeah.
You make,
right.
You get a check for $2,600.
Right.
And you make 34% of that.
Right.
I mean, you don't make any money. So there have been a handful of things where I got a decent paycheck. I remember Small Soldiers and,
kids movies.
Year One. And yeah, well, I do a lot. And plus I do the voiceovers for, Kung Fu Panda and Megamind and, Curious George and stuff, and I do lots of. Oddly enough, I never would have expected 20 years ago when we were sitting around at Catch or wherever. If you would have said, "Yeah, you're going to be really huge in kids movies," nobody would have guessed that.
And I don't know that there's any real shame in that.
Mm-mm. No, I have no shame in it, and at some point I'll have a kid, and I'm sure they'll be delighted.
I'm glad you're excited about having a kid. That's new, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we'll take our time. I mean, Amber, as you said, is young and, and she has a career, to think of. And that's important.
Well, everything, sounds like everything's going pretty good.
Yeah. Things are good. And, I've got nothing, on the horizon, but I plan on, 80% of the work I've done is self-generated anyway, and just sitting back and figuring out what my next thing is, Yeah.
Well, it's good to see you, Dave.
Well, you too, as always. And thanks for having me in your shed.
Garage. That's it. That is a sincere and very real hangout time with old friends right there. Me and Dave Cross. I hope you enjoyed that. That is our show. Please, if you live in the New Jersey area, as I said before, I'll be at the Stress Factory this weekend. That's Friday and Saturday, the 13th and 14th of April. Love to have you come down. What else? WTFpod.com for all your WTF pod needs. Get your justcoffee.coop. I've got a link to the WTF blend in the merch section on WTF Pod. Go there and get on the mailing list, kick in a few shekels. Check out the app situation. Check out the episode guide. Check out my calendar. Do what you need to do. Leave a few comments. Try to be pleasant. I know some of you people out there who comment on things online are not pleasant. And we'll indulge it, but don't be too mean. Boomer! Come here, buddy. Like, what he did it like once. I can't even get him to come in here now. I got pressure behind my right eye and pain in the back of my right head. I'm trying not to assume the worst. I'm trying not to Google brain cancer. Again.